Hey guys, Dan from Team $10 here, and I've kind of had a crappy week. I crashed my bike into the bus. I crashed my controller into the wall, as Austin would know. I even crashed my freaking amiibo into the street. So that's quite the trilogy of things I've crashed this week. But I decided to make a video for you guys today as my next review, and I'm going to make my day and your day insanely better with the Crash Bandicoot N Sane Trilogy, originally released in 2017 on the PS4, following release on the Nintendo Switch and Xbox One a year later. This trilogy remasters all three original Crash Bandicoot games on the PS1, so it's time to take a look at how this trilogy holds up, as well as if they're good games. They really are, by the way. So let's get started with the first game in the series, Crash Bandicoot 1. It was a dark and stormy night without the Stormy, and the evil Dr. Neocortex and his assistant Dr. Nitrous Brio began to experiment on animals for his quest for world domination, with the first test ending in failure, creating our beloved orange hero Crash Bandicoot, promptly deciding to get the fuck out of there, leading him to fall out of a window, leaving his probably but never clearly outright stated girlfriend Tana defenseless to be experimented on. But before I go on, let me just say that this opening cutscene is absolutely fantastic. Like, Jesus Christ, look how far we've come. It's amazing that we're at a point where Crash Bandicoot of all franchises can look like a fucking Pixar movie. The expressions, the colors, it's just amazing. And these amazing graphics stand out amongst the entire trilogy. This is definitely obvious considering it's 3 updated games from the PS1 to the modern consoles of today. But the updated production values like the music, the sound design, the character models all look amazing. And all 3 games are now gorgeous. Sorry to get sidetracked, but anyway, from here on your mission is pretty simple. Rescue Tana, defeat the evil Dr. Cortex, and that's it. Yeah guys, that's really it. The plot's pretty damn simple. And I mean that for all the Crash games. Yeah, they get a little more complex than this, but not by much. Whew, that's a relief. Have you seen how long the last review went just because of the story? God damn. If I had 3 epic skill plots, I was gonna lose my goddamn mind. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's move on to the gameplay. So what exactly do you do in Crash Bandicoot? Well, seeing how Crash was one of the pioneers of 3D platforming in 1996 alongside Super Mario, most of his action is in a 3D space, with you going along a hallway-like terrain with backtracking still being just about as shit as ever. But Crash also has plenty of 2D action in the mix here and there, so there's a pretty decent amount of variety in what you'll face along the way. And speaking of along the way, you're going to be making your way across 3 different islands, each with different locales from jungles and rivers, to towers and factories, and then finally to face off against Cortex, with plenty of challenges along the way. Now I just want to say before we on that compared to something like Super Mario 64, I love that game by the way, I always love how this game stood itself apart, giving us some more natural environments, and I always just thought there was a certain charm to all of it. But moving on, when it comes to Crash's actual moveset, he's not exactly breaking a ton of new ground, at least until 2 and 3. Anyway, he can do just about anything you expect someone of his status quo to be able to do in a game like this. Crash can move and jump like any of these guys, but unlike those guys, Crash has this flashy new spin move to get the job done too. Whether it's spinning into enemies or the different types of crates you'll come across, spinning will get the job done just fine. And it's sometimes the only way to defeat certain enemies too, like these annoying ass jungle bitches who will push you out, fucking jerks. Which leads me into my next point, which is that Crash can die very, and I mean very, easily in this game. Be it bottomless pits, a giant ass boulder, drowning, bottomless pits, fire, blowing up, bottomless pits, oh, and monkeys. Like seriously guys, if you get hit in this game, Crash instantly fucking dies. Yikes, talk about a one-hit wonder. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think this is the best time to bring this up, so I'll say this now. Crash 1 is by far the hardest of all 3 games, both on a first playthrough and if you're going for a 100% run. But yeah, Crash 1, unforgiving as shit. If not for the checkpoints or the one and only power-up in this game. Now just who is the power-up in this game? Well, the power-up is the one and only mask, Uka-Uka. Uka-Uka is a living spiritual mask of sorts that aids Crash on his journey, and also gives you something to look at on the loading screens, giving you an extra hit when you break him out of a specially marked crate, break another Uka-Uka crate without getting hit along the way, which will let you take 2 extra hits, but then breaking 3 Uka-Uka crates without getting hit will cause Uka-Uka to put himself onto Crash's face and grant you temporary invincibility akin to the star in Super Mario. Grant you the ability to smash through all types of crates and all enemies at a rapid pace until it wears off, going back down to 2 extra hits until you find another one. But hey, speaking of crates, let's finally talk about them a bit. So aside from just being the level, which by the way is just getting to the end like your average platformer, every level is filled with crates to break, with them usually containing different amounts of Wumpa Fruit, which are basically your coins for this game, as collecting 100 of them will give you an extra life. And let me tell you, it's incredibly easy to farm lives in this game. I swear, they just throw them at you like candy. But as I said before, it is incredibly easy to die in this game, but you probably won't experience too many game overs, unless you're Stride. But yeah, 100 Wumpa Fruits equals an extra life, and can I just say that spinning into a whole bunch of crates at once is the most satisfying feeling in the world. Just hearing them all get smashed at the same time is just such a great feeling. Yeah, that feels great. But it is far, and I mean far from all fun and games when it comes to the crates. Because if you want to get 100% in this game, you will pull your hair out on some of these stages. Okay, here's how it works. Each level, with the exception of boss fights, all contain a preset number of boxes to break, including regular crates containing Wumpa Fruit, TNT crates containing which you need to step on then move away from, and bonus boxes, which you can access by warping into a bonus stage within a level, which you unlock by collecting 3 character tokens scattered across the level, from Tawna to Cortex to even Brio. These bonus stages contain their own sets of boxes to break, adding to the overall total to the level's crates. But if you do fail them, you do get to try again, so that's not an issue, and you don't lose any lives either. But anyway, breaking every box in a level will reward you with that level's gem, which are the real goals in this game. Now here's the thing, in the original Crash one, breaking every box in a level basically required you to outright master the stage, because if you died at all in the level, you'd get no gem at all even if you broke all the boxes. But here in the Sane Trilogy, Vicarious Visions definitely saw this and made it 1,000 times better, as now, thank the heavens, you can die as many times as you please and still be able to collect the gem at the end of the stage. 2 words. Thank fuck. But Vicarious Visions didn't make it that easy, as the 5 color gems scattered throughout the game's most challenging stages still require you to beat the entire level without dying. Which is fine until you remember that slippery climb exists. Oh fuck! Yeah, did I mention that Crash 1 has plenty of bullshit moments? Now don't get me wrong, the level design I'd say around 80 to 90% of the time is fair. There are definitely plenty of bullshit moments scattered across the adventure though. This stupid night level requiring you to not get hit at all to be able to see where the fuck you're going. Fucking slippery climb with some of its outright leaps of faith. These fucking boulder levels where you can't see where you're going against the camera. And need I say more about these bridge levels? Fuck my life. Alright, Uka-Uka, I've had enough of your shit for one day. Fuck you, Uka-Uka. Yeah, Crash 1 definitely has its moments of dumb shit sprinkled in, and the worst part is that it never really progresses up in difficulty either. It just kinda gets hard in some levels, and then the next level can be a cakewalk. But with all my complaining about the past few minutes, let me say this. All these feelings I had about these levels, I only had in my first couple playthroughs, because once you get to understand these levels, Crash 1 becomes a fucking blast for most of the ride. Because if you can get past those bullshit moments, I really think there's something special underneath. But before I move on to the next game, you're probably wondering, what happens if you collect every gem by the end of the game anyway? Well, it's kind of funny because right before you fight Cortex for the final fight, one last level opens up right before that is known as the Great Hall, in which all the gems you collect form a hallway of sorts, leading you to where Tana was kept hostage, allowing you to rescue her before you even ever fight Cortex. But hey, speaking of Cortex, I guess I should mention the boss fights before I move on. The boss fights in Crash 1 are... they're not awful by any means, and I actually think the one with Nitro Brio is actually a really cool fight, but the rest of them are just kind of there, and can definitely be better too. One last thing I'd like to mention before we move on is the music. All the music from each game was totally redone, and it all sounds terrific. Now, do all these songs have a super catchy melody that I could listen to for hours? Hell no! But all of them definitely sound far more atmospheric and definitely benefited from the remake. The sound design in these games also heavily improved. Like I said before, spinning into a whole bunch of boxes at once is immensely satisfying, and now doing it with the new sound design is as fun as ever. So overall, Crash 1, pretty good. It's pretty solid overall, but still has plenty of stupid shit thrown in there. Fuck you, Slippery Climb! But it did a great job of laying a lot of the groundwork for the rest of the trilogy. And while it does definitely reek in some areas of being the first game of the series, I can forgive in some aspects because of that. But I'll never forgive Slippery Climb! Now, imagine a game where Naughty Dog took everything that worked in the first game and
multiply it by 6!
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
the best one, by the way. Ah yes, Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. The Orange Marsupio's second installment, only a year after the original. It might let me blow my load a little bit early, but simply put, this game is leaps and bounds better than the first game in so many ways, from the exciting level designs, to the more exotic locales, to Crash's brand new moves give you more freedom in how you play each level. Guys, Crash 2 is just amazing. But let's go back a bit and actually go a bit more in depth, starting with the plot. Now, putting this out here now, Crash 2 immediately picks up right after the first game. And when I mean immediately, I mean as in at the end of the battle with Cortex in the first game, it ends with Cortex seemingly falling to his death. But here in Crash 2, it starts with Cortex falling and landing in a cave where he discovers a purple crystal with the most evil of all evil laughs.
Of course.
Ah yes, truly terrifying. One time jump later, and we cut to Cortex on his brand new space station alongside his new assistant, Engine, who informs Cortex that the one crystal he collected won't be powerful enough to fire the laser on his space station that he wants to use to, you guessed it, take over the world.
No way!
But anyway, we soon cut to Crash taking a nap and hanging with new character, Coco Bandicoot, Crash's sister, who, oh my god, she is just so adorable, oh my god, I just want to pinch her little cheeks. Anyway, she then wakes up Crash to go get her a new computer battery, and after a short little tutorial area giving you a little refresher and one of Crash's new moves, I'll talk about that later, Crash gets teleported to a warp room where Cortex convinces Crash to collect crystals for him to, quote, help him save the world. Yeah, Cortex, you're dumb as shit. Read the title of the fucking game, you hairy minion. But anyway, you're probably wondering just why does Crash agree to collect the crystals for Cortex? Well, because Crash is a dum-dum. The story is about as simple as the last game. Nothing ever really changes besides the occasional video message from Cortex, as well as Coco sending you video messages from time to time in the warp room. But anyway, with all that said, collecting crystals is the name of the game here, with each level containing at least one required purple crystal and one gem for breaking all the boxes in that level, just like in the first game. And also like in the first game, there are a few levels which contain 5 colored gems. But unlike Crash 1, the way you collect the color gems is entirely different, as unlike the first game where you had to beat a few of the levels without dying, and breaking every box, In this game, the colored gems in the few levels they're played in are a third objective, and are super hidden, often having you unlock hidden pathways, and other levels leading you to the colored gem in a different level, treating the colored gems as a third objective, making some levels ultimately have 3 gems to collect. But hey, speaking of levels, let's talk about Crash 2's levels, and oh man, they're a treat. So for starters, unlike Crash 1, where you're on a world map of sorts traveling across 3 different islands, here in Crash 2, you're in these new warp rooms that simply, well, warp you to each level and back, each time. In my opinion, I think this is a far more convenient method of traveling if you're like me and just want to move on to the next stage. But what about the stages themselves? Well, like Crash 1, Crash 2 still contains the somewhat natural environments of the first game, but thanks to the new warp rooms, there is now far more variety to the locations you'll travel to in this game. In addition to already established areas like forests and rivers, you'll now be going to places like snowy mountains, sewers, ancient ruins, and even space in the last few levels. But it never feels like an entirely different game, and I can appreciate that. The game still does a great job of maintaining that semi-sense of realism, but it gets even better because now there are even some differences for pre-established level themes, such as how in the river levels, they now have sections with some water skateboarding, or how in the forest levels, they change up some of the weather aesthetics or times of day to make those levels do a better job of standing out from one another. For example, take these 2 levels in the first warp room that both take place in a forest. Well, now one of those levels has it raining in the scenery, and the other has that golden hour sunset look, making them both more distinct and stand out more to each other. But let's take a step back and talk more about Crash himself in this game. So just like Crash 1, Crash can still jump and spin, but it seems somewhat Naughty Dog like to play Mega Man 3, because new to Crash's moveset is the slide. Now let me say, the slide is an awesome new addition to Crash's moveset, as the brand new slide allows for more interactive level design by giving you yet another way to attack enemies, slide through some tight spaces, and most importantly, give you the ability to make a higher jump. By simply sliding with the A button into pressing B to jump right after, Crash will perform a higher jump, which is especially helpful for making some trickier jumps and reaching those higher crits in the air. And not to mention, it's also just really fun to perform as well. Other new mechanics include the water skateboarding, as I just mentioned. You can now ride a jetpack in a couple of the endgame levels. And there is now a brand new type of box to break, which are the brand new nitro crates. Now these will be the bane of your existence, as unlike the TNT crates that allow you to at least run away for a few seconds before exploding, one little touch from these and ouch. And it's even made worse by the fact that oftentimes, these crates are usually in a group together, forcing you to very carefully navigate without touching a single one. But here's where it gets more interesting, as seeing how you can't break these crates at all without taking a hit, these crates will still count towards the overall box totals in each stage. So just how are you supposed to destroy them and live to the end of the level? Well, near the end of each stage, there will usually be a metallic switch box with a green lighting, which by hitting it will instantly destroy all the nitro crates in the stage. So bottom line, don't touch the nitro crates. But coming back to what I said about the more intricate level design, that holds true for almost the entire game. The level designs in this game are, at least in my opinion, far more interesting, as well as fun to travel through than the first game. Now don't get me wrong, Crash 1, besides its bullshit segments, definitely has a lot of fun to be found. But Crash 2 design feels far more polished and consistent than before. Whereas in Crash 1, difficulty just kind of popped up now and again, Crash 2 is far more consistent and has a progressive scale up in difficulty over the course of the adventure. With all that being said though, Crash 2 still definitely has its fair share of bullshit moments thrown in there, but the sheer number of them is far less intrusive than before, and the overall design of each level is far more forgiving than Crash 1 as a whole as well, giving you a lot more breathing room in dangerous areas. And even though I can definitely go back and play Crash 1 just fine now, this game just feels so much better as a whole. In fact, the whole game almost feels like it takes place in a different universe. And this also applies to Crash 3, as both games just feel so radically different to Crash 1, in level design, characters, boss fights, and hold on! I never did talk about the boss fights in this game. Well, real quick, let's talk about that. To start on a positive note, the boss fights are far better in this game than Crash 1. both having a lot more visual flair and far more engaging, as opposed to... But anyway, the boss fights are way more interesting, where in one you may be fighting the Komodo brothers at the same time, which is actually a really engaging fight, might I add, where in another fight you may be fighting new character Tiny Tiger across a bunch of floating platformers. By the way, Vicarious Visions, props to keeping true to Tiny Tiger's original design, still making him look fairly intimidating, but moving on. You'll then fight Dr. Cortex's assistant Engine in a giant robot in space throwing Wumpa Fruit at him. And to make it all even better, Vicarious Visions even made the final boss an improvement too, where in the original game you chase Cortex through space with a jetpack. Actually, hold on. I don't mean to jump around here, but I just need to say, I'm sorry, but the jetpack honestly controls like absolute shit. Yes, even in the remake. I'm sorry, but these controls feel and look just so awkward, and it's just not that fun either. I can credit Naughty Dog for trying to implement decent jetpack controls in a game from 1997, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. But I will say, cutting back to the final boss, while one, the jetpack controls are better in this fight than either of the jetpack levels, it just kind of feels better in this type of fight, Vicarious Visions actually gave a reason for why you're chasing Cortex, as in the Sane Trilogy, you can see Cortex running off with the one crystal he had collected in the opening cutscene, where in the original game he was just running away like a pansy. It was just a really nice touch by Vicarious Visions. But real quick before I move on, I should also mention the reward this time for collecting all the crystals. Well, unlike last time where you basically got an alternate ending before you ever even fought Cortex, this time you get a 100% ending if you gather every crystal and every gem. But just how does this happen? Well, early on in the game, you get a video message from Nitrous Brio, the former assistant to Dr. Cortex in the last game. Well, because I guess they had a falling out or something, Brio informs you that if you bring him all the crystals, and you do, he then fires a giant laser gun at Cortex's space station, blowing it up in the process. Again, just like last time, it's nothing huge, but it is admittedly really fun to watch. I think it's a solid reward in and of itself. If it wasn't clear enough by now, Naughty Dog back in 1997 clearly took feedback based off the reviews of the first game, and truly made a game that will go down as the pinnacle of the entire franchise. But with all the positive praise of this game, here's the question we go off from here. We're 2 games in and we've already seen a pretty massive jump in quality from the alright Crash 1 to the amazing Crash 2. So, does Crash 3 continue this upward trend of excellence that happened from 1 to 2? Or does it suffer from symptoms of sequelitis with Naughty Dog trying to top themselves once again? Well...
The answer is yes and no.
Crash Bandicoot 3, or Crash Bandicoot, is the third and final installment in this insanely awesome trilogy. I am so sorry. And just like Crash 2, was only released just a year after the last one. And while Crash 1 and 2 were and still are both great platformers, 2 more than 1, still stuck to a fairly grounded approach in its locales that I had mentioned before, with forests, rivers, and the occasional more interesting locations like factories and space levels. Crash 3 just really goes all out this time with its level themes, with time travel now being the central focus to this little plot here. But hey, speaking of plot, let's get right into it. So like Crash 1 and 2, Crash 3 begins seconds after the last game, with the developers also assuming, like last time, you collected every last crystal, because the game starts with Cortex falling from his space station at the end of the last game, and lands in a mysterious place known as the Time Twister. But then it gets a little more interesting, as the remains of Cortex's space station unleashes an ancient evil known as Uka-Uka, the evil younger twin brother to Aku-Aku. Yeah, that annoying asshole mask you've seen in plenty of game over screens finally gets a role in this game's story. Soon after, Cortex and Uka-Uka, joined by new villain Dr. Entropy, the creator of the Time Twister, form an alliance to once again gather crystals to, you guessed it, take over the world. Soon cutting to Crash, Coco, and Aku-Aku, Aku-Aku senses evil on the horizon and tells them about the origins of Uka-Uka and the Time Twister. So in an effort to stop them, Aku-Aku teleports Crash as well as Coco for this adventure to the Time Twister in an effort to stop Cortex, Uka-Uka, and Dr. Entropy. But before I move on, I'd like to add that while I said Coco does join Crash for this adventure fully playable for the first time, for the Sane Trilogy, Vicarious Visions add her as a playable character to all 3 games. Honestly, it's nothing huge at all, but still a really cool bonus. Certainly a way cooler bonus than being able to play as Shadow in Sonic Forces. Anyway, moving on. From here on, it's a journey through time and space, with both Bandicoots being thrusted into tons of different settings and environments, from the medieval times fighting knights and wizards to the prehistoric era where you get to ride dinosaurs and in some cases run away from dinosaurs. Help me! Anyway, more areas include the Great Wall of China, flying planes in World War I, and exploring the ancient deserts and pyramids of Egypt. I didn't even mention them all. Honestly, the amount of different locations you'll travel to in Crash 3 completely trumps 1 and 2 combined, and is often much to its favor. The core gameplay hallway design that Crash Bandicoot is known for is still here in full force, and I argue that they completely perfected it in this installment. Now, instead of chase levels and normal levels and 2D levels and so on, core Crash levels can seamlessly now transition to one another, making the level designs in some cases even better than a good chunk of Crash 2's level designs. But you probably heard the term core Crash levels. Well, yes, I did say that because this is where I think Crash 3 becomes a bit divisive in terms of gameplay. Because while the time traveling plot does a great job giving Naughty Dog no limits to what level themes they wanted to use, I also think it's kind of also the game's biggest weakness in some aspects. Because now, in addition to core Crash gameplay, we have a ton of other different playstyles to check out here too, with most of them revolving around vehicles. These include new styles like swimming, motorcycle racing, flying planes, and even jet skis. And that's not even all of them. Now, with a game having this many different playstyles, it could easily make a game horribly suffer. You don't know what I mean? Just go play a lot of 3D Sonic games. But here I think it mostly works because with all these different styles, they still have the same end goals and identities of the core Crash gameplay, between breaking boxes and collecting crystals, and so it all fits at the end of the day. Mostly. I say mostly because even though all these different styles ultimately fit within the context of the game itself, some of these different styles are definitely more fun to play than others. The water levels are pretty lame. Honestly, I think Crash actually controls just fine on water, especially for 1998. I just don't like the swimming levels in this game in general. The levels where Coco is riding a jet ski are also not that great either. I hate how loose the jet ski feels in these levels, especially when turning, and it makes me most of the time just constantly tapping the go button instead of holding it, so I don't go so far on my turn when I just want to break the box in front of me. And for all that's good in the world, fuck the motorcycle levels. I seriously hate these levels. Not because they control bad, but because of 2 things. 1, it just doesn't feel at all like Crash Bandicoot, and just feels like a below average racer, despite the fact they still break boxes. And 2, saying how you have to get the gem at the end of the race, you have to get first place. Sometimes it's not fun when some fat ass racers in front of you push you off road, basically forcing you to have to restart. Okay, I'm good. But while some of the playstyles can be annoying, none of them are outright terrible, and despite what I just said about the stupid ass motorcycle levels, all these different levels and styles still feel mostly polished in their own right, and still uphold the quality of the design set in Crash 2. This level of quality also extends to the rest of the game, including the boss fights. The boss fights in this game are even better than Crash 2, with all of them also taking advantage of the time trial plot, with one fight taking place in a Coliseum featuring a rematch with Tiny Tiger with Cortex. Looking pretty hot, no homo. The other boss fights are pretty sick too, with fights like Coco fighting Engine in her own spaceship, that is so awesome by the way, and Entropy putting up a pretty cool fight. And my dog Dingodile is a awesome character, and is also a hell of a man. The final battle is also pretty great, with Crash and Uka-Uka facing off against Cortex and Uka-Uka, providing a pretty nice mirror between good and evil. But yeah, this fight's pretty cool, and a good last fight to this trilogy. But something that's really cool in Crash 3 is that this time, in regards to boss fights, you actually get legitimate rewards in this game besides just being able to move on to the next set of levels. The rewards in this are also actually pretty good, with pretty much all of them being upgrades to Crash and Coco's moveset, from being able to perform a double jump, the legitimately awesome super spin, an upgraded belly flop, a fruit bazooka, alright, and even the speed shoes, allow you to run way faster across stages, which really helps you in the brand new time relics to collect. Time relics, in the easiest way to describe them, are basically time trials to complete each level in, with 3 classes of relics to collect between Sapphire, Gold, and Platinum.
I think I just peed a little.
Now the Sapphire and Gold relics are honestly not that hard to collect. You just basically play low without making any big mistakes and you should be just fine. But the Platinum relics are another story entirely. If you want any chance of collecting these, you basically have to have some godlike skill to have any chance at collecting these bad boys. Because you have to look for any shortcuts that might come your way, take advantage of every upgrade you achieved in the main game, and basically have to know the end level inside and out completely. Oh, and don't forget the time grade you should break in the time trials. Time crates replace a lot of the crates when you begin the time trial mode, and breaking them between a 1, 2, or 3 box will stop the timer to save some time. But speaking of time trials, time relics were also added to Crash 1 and 2 for the Sane Trilogy, and even the speed shoes were added into Crash 2. Now with Crash 2, adding the speed shoes into that game for the sake of the newly added time relics completely makes sense seeing how the level design in that game allows for multiple ways to use your skills. Crash 1 on the other hand, while still a decent game, is so restricted in its core design however, that not adding the speed shoes into that game totally makes sense. But coming back to Crash 3, to sum it up, Crash 3 is definitely a great game, and a game that I still love, but I don't think it reaches the height of its predecessor or maybe even Crash 1, because while the core gameplay in Crash 3 is absolutely top notch, I just wish there was way more of that here than the multiple different vehicle styles. And while yes, I did go over how none of them are outright terrible, and definitely fit within the context of Crash 3, I still think they, in some ways, weigh Crash 3 down, but not in a too many things at once kind of way, but in that I wish the game was more focused on the core gameplay from the first two titles. Again, I still love Crash 3, and in some ways it's even better than Crash 2, but if I had to choose the best one of the three, it's still definitely 2. Overall, the Crash Bandicoot N Trilogy is a great package of putting the Orange Marsupio's best adventures in one package for the modern era. And that's it. That's all 3 games in this collection. While definitely not without their flaws, the Crash Bandicoot Original Trilogy all deserve to be remembered and deserve the remaster treatment. And I can only hope that Activision takes note of the 10 million copies this game sold and makes a true sequel to these games instead of whatever we got after that. But speaking of Activision, it seems after the Sane Trilogy, they weren't done yet because next time folks, it's time for Crash and his cast of characters to start their engines with Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. So, I hope you all have a great night, take care, please share this video, and I will see you all in our Team $10 Season 4 Direct. See ya!